Thank you so much for being here. This is the last day of our conference. So thank you if you've been joining us all throughout this week, or if today's your first day, thank you so much for being here. My name is Lisbeth Gadares. I am the Community Stewardship Manager for the New York, New Jersey Harbor and Estuary Program, and I am also the Urban Waters Ambassador for the Lower Passaic River Urban Waters Federal Partnership. So you're all here today knowing that we partnered with seasoned filmmaker Scott Morris for a viewing of his latest film known as American River. And the really exciting thing about this is that, this is a preview before it hits the general public next year. So we're really glad that we were able to partner with Scott and offer all of our partners this opportunity. And if you haven't seen the film yet, we definitely encourage you to watch it. It's a wonderful documentary that follows author Mary Bruno and river guide Carl Alderson, who I just saw locked in as well. So you're amongst a star. It follows them on this journey that's 80 miles long, and that starts at the Passaic's pristine headwaters and makes its way down all the way to the toxic mouth in Newark Bay. So again, the movie is available for streaming now for all of you. We've actually extended the screening time to tomorrow at 11 p.m. So you want to make sure that you start the movie no later than 9 p.m. if you haven't watched it yet. And I believe Rosanna has just added a couple of links to where you can go ahead and read more about the film and also grab your ticket. So please make sure you take advantage of that. So again, this morning, we're lucky enough to sit down with both Scott Morris, who's the filmmaker, and also our moderator, Michelle Langa, who you probably met at the very start of our conference. She is the joint staff attorney for Hackensack Riverkeeper and New York, New Jersey Baykeeper, and she is also the co-chair of the Passaic River Community Advisory Group, also known as the CAG. And so they're going to jump on and say a quick hello, and then I'm going to go ahead and play the trailer real quick, just so that if you haven't already seen the movie, I want to give you a chance to see what you're in for. So Michelle and Scott, you want to say a quick hello?
Hi, folks. Thanks for watching the movie and for joining us. Looking forward to our chat. We'll try to consider both those who've seen it and those who haven't. So take a look at the trailer. And I want to mention, too, that watching the trailer on Zoom is not the best way to see it, but it's adequate. And if you want to see it in its full high-quality glory, I believe Liz has put a link in the chat, so you can go directly to the trailer online, which looks really beautiful. So it's 2 minutes long, and I think it gives a pretty good overview.
Thanks, Scott. Michelle?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm excited to really spread the word on this film because it's really beautiful. So it's going to be great to get some questions and to talk about it and our river, which is exciting. So we'll kick off with the trailer first, and then we'll some questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle and Scott. So yes, just wanted to play the quick trailer for you all again, so that if you haven't already seen this, you have a chance to know what you can expect.
When we were kids, my mom would tell us, don't play by the river, but she didn't even have to tell us that because it was so obvious that this is not the kind of place that you're going to go wading in or swimming in or even dipping your hand in. It was that scary. But there came a time when I was compelled to find out what had happened to the river of my youth. If you wanted to write about a river and not kayak it, it would be like writing about a mountain and never climbing it.
Oh, wow.
When I kayaked the Upper River, I had no idea that even existed. I had no way of even thinking about the Passaic as a pretty river. Rivers have amazing stories. They flow through space and they flow through time. And to write about a river, to travel a river, there's a new story around every bend.
I remember my grandparents telling me stories about swimming in the Passaic River. They would tell me how clean it used to be and how they used to picnic along it.
It's the river that really built New Jersey. It's the river that, in many ways, built the country.
The river is no longer the river it once was. It's a polluted waterway. Not just any polluted waterway, it is one of the major polluted waterways of the United States.
It's illegal to catch crabs in the whole lower 17-mile stretch of this river.
If you want to find the polluted areas, you can test the soil, you can test the air, so forth, or just check out the economic level of the people who live there.
We not only will fight for this, but we deserve this. This is a community that has been for too long separated and divorced from a connection to this river.
All right. I love that trailer. All right. Well, I will let Michelle take it from here. And yeah, let's kick this Q&A off. Thanks so much again, everyone, for being here today.
Excellent. And thank you, Scott, for joining us for this and for sharing the movie with us at the conference. It's fantastic.
My pleasure.
So just to kick it off with a big question, I think, what inspired American River about the Passaic River?
I just lost your audio a second, but I think you asked what inspired me to make the film.
Yes, sorry.
No, that's okay. I just want to also preface by saying, you know, that again, the trailer doesn't look so great on Zoom. It has a jitter to it, almost looks like a slideshow, but it's full motion and quite dynamic and shot in very high resolution, which is maybe one of the reasons why it's not streaming so smoothly here. But when you watch it online through the platform I'll use, which is Show and Tell, it's quite beautiful. So there won't be those issues. So what inspired it? Well, I actually live a few blocks from the Passaic River, and I lived here for 25 years with the Passaic walking distance from my house and knew nothing about it. I came from New York with my family, and it was something kind of hidden through the trees and the weeds a couple blocks away. I live in Chatham, in an industrial area of the town that was where the the river goes through. So, and I was making another film at the time, which was Saving the Great Swamp, which actually answers a comment by Carol.
Yeah.
About why didn't I tell that story in this film? Well, there's a whole film about it called Saving the Great Swamp, and I can give you a link to that. It's available on Amazon. I wasn't going to tell that same story again, and it's a big story. So, and that film's been on public television. So, but I was doing that film, and I saw a book talk by Mary Bruno at a local library about her book, and I was amazed because it was her book, An American River, From Paradise to Superfund, all about the Passaic. I knew nothing about the river. Well, what I knew was I would drive around New Jersey with my family. Maybe on the same day, I'd go over several bridges, and every bridge had a sign that would say Passaic River. But you never saw the river because it was usually hidden. And it was also going in all different directions. Sometimes I'd go and it was going north, sometimes south, sometimes east, sometimes west. And I thought, this can't be the same river. So when Mary gave her book talk, it was a bit of an eye opener. So when I finished the Great Swamp film, I set my sight on my next project and reread the book. And I thought felt like kind of an off chance that this would happen. But let me give Mary a call and see if she might agree to do the trip again. Now, 10 years later, from having written the book, for a documentary, and she was all in. And so that was very exciting. And then she said, I'll do it on one condition, if my paddling partner, Carl Alderson, can join me again. And he agreed immediately. So we had this great team to go out and do the film. And so that's how the film really got started. And I was lucky to have, very lucky to have a funder behind me who had funded the Great Swamp film, Dillard Kirby, who has a foundation here, but has also been personally involved in stories and issues about New Jersey, came on board to actually and agreed to fund this project. So in the fall of 2018, we got underway and we did the principal photography. So that's sort of that story, I think.
And that actually leads pretty nicely into sort of my next question is, you know, and you touched on this a little bit of what your vision was for making the film. Did you find that it was easier or more difficult? Were there technical challenges to filming on a river that is maybe not as easily accessible or is clean in every area? Or you know, there's a lot of things, there are a lot of challenges around the Passaic.
All that, Michelle, but I mean, I was lucky to have Marion and especially Carl, who's an expert on that river. He knows every inch of it. To really, we did a lot of location scouting. We had a lot of conversations and discussions, but I was very excited to do the film for a whole bunch of reasons. And it wasn't just because there's a really important environmental story to tell, but I really love making films. And to me, this was an exciting opportunity, that there was a lot of visual potential for it. The river has so many different parts and so many different characters as it changes from one place to the next, that I wanted to cover it in a grand scale. I wanted it to be very cinematic. I want to really reveal the river in every aspect to an audience. And I also want to really have a really rich experience of following Mary and Carl on the kayak trip. So that could have went into the idea of how we approach the coverage. So I wanted to do it in a practically real-time way. It makes the film very urgent and exciting rather than stage everything. So we covered the kayak trip in pretty much of a real-time 4-day trip, which was similar to what you had done in the book. And the way we covered it was with 10 cameras. We had, land-based cameras. We had 4 GoPros, 2 on each kayak. I was in a camera boat, traveling along when the river allowed it. Sometimes it's just too skinny to put a motorized craft in. We had an electric craft, which was a Zodiac, so it didn't make any noise. And then we had a great drone crew, a very high-end drone crew that we actually went and rehearsed some of those shots ahead of time. Some of you have seen the film, may remember that incredible shot of them coming underneath the Millington Railroad trestle where the camera pulls back. Well, we had one shot to get that. And so we were there the week before rehearsing that shot, and we luckily got it, along with lots of others. So yeah, and I ended up with 150 hours of footage. And that included a couple of long sit-down interviews with Mary and Carl, and several people that we interviewed before and after the kayak trip along the way, to really flesh out the stories of the history of the river, including museum director in Patterson, Len Ferriello in a great piece, and many others. When you see the film, and Anna Baptista, of course. And then it was really a matter of sort of, there's no narration, overarching narration of sort of piecing together the story from all this content. And in some respects, I was lucky that it happened during the pandemic. I mean, we finished shooting before the pandemic, but basically editing is something I do from my little studio here. And I basically am used to being by myself, in my studio, editing projects. So it took pretty much the full 2 years of the pandemic to cut the film. And then somebody also mentioned music, which was a wonderful part of the project, and happens to be done by my son, Ben Morris, who's just got his doctorate in composition, and is now teaching music, and is a great jazz performer, and has a wonderful group of musicians that he pulled together and scored the film. There's more than 40 original cues in it, and it's I think you'll all enjoy it. And then the graphic side of it too, which is we really wanted to make sure people were oriented on the river at every point along the way. So I worked with a really nice graphics company, Big Star, that created the map graphics, and also did these beautiful photo animations on the historical still images and things like that. So that's pretty much the whole bit of the kind of technical arc of what we did. Yeah,
That's fantastic. It is a huge process, I imagine. Before I ask my last question of you, we'll jump into some of the audience questions. We got a few on the Whova platform this morning. So from Terry Doss, good morning, Scott. Love the film and the score. Wondering what your next film will be.
Oh.
Any chance you would like to focus in on the Meadowlands and the Hackensack River, which is special to my heart too.
That's a good question. I'm not thinking about my next film right now. I'm really heavily focused on promoting this film because making an independent documentary is very difficult to get distributed. And we're fortunate because we are moving ahead in that direction, but it's going to take pretty much all of the rest of this year and all of next to make sure that it reaches a wide an audience as we would like. So We do have an educational distributor now, which is very exciting. So it's going to go out to colleges, universities, and libraries next year on a licensing basis. And we're also setting our sights on public television, because I have a track record of films on public TV, and we expect at some point it will be widely shown. But that's a long process too. It'll probably take at least a year to do that. And then as far as the Meadowlands, it's a good question, because Bill Sheehan is the way I got into these environmental stories on film. I mean, I was working in New York City. I was traveling through the Meadowlands back and forth every day, and one day saw egrets in the middle of the Meadowlands, and I was rather taken aback because I didn't expect it, and I was so excited. I remember I was on the train, and there was a guy looking at his newspaper next to me, and I said, "Egrets, you know," but he could care less. So so that led me to meet Bill Sheehan, and like back in, I think we're looking at almost 10 years ago now, I actually made several speculative films about the Meadowlands. I just updated my website, and the clips used to be on my website, but I did make a film for Bill. We got a small grant to do a film about CSOs, which is on my personal website, scottmorrisproductions.com, and it's called The Truth About CSOs. It's a very strong, like 7-minute documentary featuring Bill on the Hackensack, and it was a very effective tool for him to really raise awareness about that incredible issue. And Bill and I are talking all the time. As you can see, he's in the new film as well. A lot of the shots on the Passaic we took from one of his eco boats. You know, he took us out one day and we went up the river, and it's almost like having this perfectly smooth tracking shot you can get from that boat. It's beautiful, you know. So so we have an ongoing relationship there, and trying to raise money to do a big film about the Meadowlands is tough. I mean, I pitched one a while ago, but I haven't quite got there yet. So maybe this film might lead to something like that eventually. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. There's still a lot of story to tell on both rivers, I think. So a quick question from Rosanna. What was the most surprising thing, positive or negative, that you walked away from knowing about the Passaic River?
Well, I think that the thing that was most surprising, and I did not know before I got at all involved in making this film, was I had no idea that the Passaic River becomes Great Falls. And a lot of people don't know that. And it was a real eye-opener, because it sort of, in a way, really helped me open my mind to what rivers really are, and how they change in their roots, and that was, you know, a big factor. And the other thing was, I had never been on the Passaic myself. I'm not a kayaker, believe it or not. So going with Carl and Mary on this trip was like seeing the river for the first time. And in a lot of ways, everything about the river was a new experience, and a lot of it was just joyous. I mean, a little counterintuitive considering some of the major issues that the river is facing, but the whole idea there, and this was something that I discussed with Mary ahead of time, was we wanted people to like fall in love with the river, and the way you do that is by, you know, showing them a good experience on the river, you know, in all its facets. So I hope I was able to communicate that in the film.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that stood out to me, was that change in perspective you get from being on the water versus seeing it from above or near. So that was, I personally got that from it. So thank you for showing that aspect of the film, of the river.
Question as well.
Let's see. We have some more questions. Where are they? Sorry, I just lost it. So from Elise Langdon, Alicia Langdon. Hello, Scott. Thank you so much for a beautiful film. I was wondering if you could talk more about the sewage treatment plants along the river and water quality issues stemming from overland runoff and CSOs, if they exist on the river, and any efforts to combat this with green infrastructure in the area. And I think this maybe is a little bit outside of your experience through filmmaking, but did you experience any run-ins with those sort of problems?
It's a good question because, I mean, first of all, you should be aware, because I mentioned already that I've done a film about CSOs on the Hackensack, and we really treat that story in depth. Certainly as we traveled along the river, if you've seen the film, that we do encounter a sewage treatment plant. And we were a little surprised initially because we were there and the plant was active, as you could see from the film, and there was outflow happening, but we didn't smell anything. And I did go to the extent of, and Carl and I did this sort of through our research, and find out what's going on in this plant. And yes, there are a lot of CSOs on the Passaic, there are some regulations that require the water to be treated with this new infrared technology that pretty much kills most of the harmful bacteria before it's sent out into the river. Now that obviously doesn't address some of the storm overflow issues, but we did have to sort of make some hard decisions about how much we could go into the detail on all this in my film, and I think CSOs were in the back of our mind, but we didn't really decide to go down there because we were trying to stay on the river as much as possible, and the CSO issues really kind of originate within the townships, how they can treat their infrastructures, and there are big issues there. It's very expensive to change infrastructures, and as Bill Sheehan likes to point out, people waited too long. You know, the law was passed, you know, in the 80s, and here we are 40 years later, and everything is like 50 times more expensive, you know, if you want to change infrastructure in town. So I'm very aware of that, but no, it's not so much treated as part of the subject of this story.
Yeah, it is a big issue, and it may be something to talk about as an update to the CSO film at some point. So we have a question from Rita Isabel. What message would you convey to people about the river, especially to those who grew up near the river and were told to never touch it?
Well, you know, I think the messages in the film, I mean, fortunately, the upper river up above the Dundee Dam is much cleaner than it used to be. But this lower 17 is probably as bad as it ever was. And I think Carl can probably better address that than me. But I certainly did find out a lot about it. And you know, it has this really severe problem. And they've only really just begun to address it in a major way. And those are the, you know, the closing titles of the film. The most recent was about a year ago, with the EPA adding a tremendous amount of funding and engineering plans to the cleanup of the lower 17 miles. So what I can say is that there's reason to be optimistic in the long term, but that right now, you know, it's going to take probably 10 years before they even know exactly how to go about cleaning it up, because the dioxin is just this horrible material. You can't get rid of it. It sticks, and so that's about as much as I can say. You know, I do think that there's a sense of optimism around the river, especially in Newark these days. The city is definitely improving, and there's a lot of advocacy and community activity going on there. And people are not giving up. I think that's the main message, is don't give up. You know, that park is like, as Mary says in the film, is the first time you can actually get down on the river, sit by it, watch it, you know, and experience. And you can still kayak on it, although with caution at this point, the lower 17. So, and there are kayak trips that are occasionally planned, but I would not recommend doing anything self-guided, you know, down the lower 17, because it's too dangerous in places. And even the upper river is rather dangerous. That's why, as Mary says, there's no outfitters on the river. You know, the upper river is a little more popular for kayaking, but when you get too far down, it's too dangerous. So
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I think that kind of, unless Carl wants to start offering some guided tours on the river for everybody. But that touches a little bit on another question we had about whether or not there was a need for permitting, or is it free to kayak on the river if you chose to. You touched a little bit on that.
Well,
That's something you faced an issue with.
Yeah, I mean, with the river's open to all, as Carl says, you know, but you need to use you need a guide, and you need some common sense. You can't just go out because it's too dangerous. So we didn't need permission so much to kayak on the river, but we did need to fly a drone, and there are like 53 towns on the river, and I literally have almost 53 permits in my file. From going to every police department along the way, and some didn't want us to fly a drone for one reason or another, but most were fine with it. And some have certain restrictions. You know, you can't fly a drone over a certain height in Newark because of the airport. So permits were a factor, you know, and all along the way of making the film. And we tried to take the high road on all that. We're not trying to sneak any shots in, because we don't want to be, you know, we want people to know about what we're doing. We want to be you know, allowed to do it in the way we want to. So
so I know we only have a couple of minutes left. So the last question I had for you is, what's your next plan for American River?
Well, I mentioned earlier, I mean, we're really heavily focused on getting the film out. I mean, this whole past year, the film was finished a year ago. We premiered at the Montclair Film Festival. People were selling out the screenings. We've had 5 or 6 sold out screenings. And festivals have been the front line for films, because you're getting your first audience reactions. You're sort of finding out, you know, how the film is going to play, and showing it theatrically is exciting, because it really looks incredible on a big screen. It was shot in, you know, 4K, which is, for those of you who know, is the highest quality. It has a surround soundtrack. So it's very experiential when you see it in a theater. And we're also looking forward to the NJPAC screening on January 20th, which you can find out about in detail. Actually, you can buy tickets for it. Tickets are inexpensive. They're only $5 because we want a lot of people from the communities to come. And I'm going to be there with Mary Bruno and Carl doing a Q&A with the audience afterwards. And that's sort of our crowning event of the first year of distribution. And we just signed a deal with the distributor, and that, as I mentioned, so that the film will become available in the spring for educational institutions, either to stream via a proprietary platform, but we're not releasing a DVD. There's no retail availability yet, because we're trying to get it on public television, because once it's on, there's a certain order of things you have to do to release a film. So the public television is sort of the next big goal, and I hope to report to everyone that later next year you'll be able to watch it on TV if you should want to. So that's sort of our plan right now. And it is available now for events like this, private virtual screenings, and you can reach out to me if you'd want to organize one. And we'll continue to be available in this way. And also for live events, which tend to have a little bit of an overhead involved, because you've got to get a space and venue and publicity. So the virtual screening is sort of a nice alternative. So that's kind of what's happening overall.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And congratulations on the film. It's beautiful. I really enjoyed it. And just want to thank everybody who joined us today. This was really fantastic. I hope that you've all either had a chance to or will now go out and or sit home and enjoy it in the comfort of your home, or join the NJPAC screening in January. I'm
going to add to the I'm going to add the film's website to the chat. Well, I'm a little clumsy at doing this kind of thing.
Yeah, and don't worry, Scott, we can definitely help you with that. And, you know, for those of you that are also interested in other screenings, we'll make sure we'll put all that information on the Whova discussion tab to make sure that information is available for you there, as well as the links to Scott's production site and all of that stuff will be in the discussion tab for Whova.
There's a lot of information on the American River website too. There's a screenings page. You can get all the information about upcoming screenings, and there's a way to reach me to talk about possible hosting an event. So Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Scott and Michelle. And just a quick reminder again, everyone, that this concludes the last virtual portion of our conference. We'll be meeting later today at Liberty Science Center for our last few sessions and our keynote panel, which will be in person. And so just a reminder that registration starts at 2 p.m. But if you're interested in knowing a little bit more information about the restoration plans for Liberty State Park, be sure to get there an hour earlier. So be sure to get there by 1 for a special pre-conference sort of mingle, talk, and tour of Liberty State Park, where you get to hear about their latest plans. But again, registration officially starts at 2 p.m. So we hope that all of you can make it. And just a big thank you once again to all of our participants today and to our moderator, Michelle, and our filmmaker, Scott Morris, for being here today. Thank you, and we hope to see you later. And thanks again for joining our conference.
Thanks, Liz.